What's up, guys? Today I'm going to look at the newly released Panasonic Lumix BS1H, and I'm just going to give you my initial thoughts and impressions on it, coming from a cinematographer here based out of Toronto. I love keeping up with tech, and in this channel, I want to be as honest as possible with my thoughts on it. Now, of course, these are all my opinions. I could be wrong. Who cares, right? But taking my advice with a grain of salt, with whatever amount of knowledge you want or amount of judgment you want to use. I'm just going to give you my thoughts and opinions on them according to what I believe this camera is good at and what I think might be lacking. All right, so I know that this is kind of based off of, it's based off of the S1H, the box version of it, that can give you different form factor. And I feel like a lot of people who are more into the cinema realm and want to rig up a camera for example, say narrative work or for documentary work, this is an excellent camera for that. Whereas S1H takes on the mirrorless type of body form factor, kind of like the hybrid mirrorless type of camera. Whereas this, first impression right off the bat is that it's small, it's light, and you clearly are going to need to rig it. You're going to need a cage for this. I don't think these mounting points, even though there's 6 of them along the side, are really going to do the trick. I feel like you're going to need to rig this for sure. I'd also be worried about it being dinged and how strong this thing actually is, given that its actual weight, which I believe is about, I could probably find that out in the spec sheet over here. We're looking at the total weight of 585 grams. So that's 1.3 pounds, which is rather light. Now, my biggest worry about the weight as well, being so light, is the fact that this does not come with IBIS. Now, I get it. Cinema cameras do not have IBIS. And this is kind of emulating a cinema camera type of feel, of kind of entering into that realm. And I will say that not having IBIS and being this light of a camera, it concerns me with movement and micro jitters and things of such nature. I typically shoot on Blackmagic cameras, and Blackmagic cameras have that issue as well. The pocket cameras, the Ursa is fine because it's nice and heavy, but you always want a little bit more weight for your camera so that you can, get rid of those little tiny nasty micro jitters. This is going to definitely suffer from that. So I think the S1H is excellent because it has 5-axis stabilization, and I've used the GH5 for years. It's been my bread maker for when I was newer in this whole industry. And I will say that GH5's IBIS is amazing. I can only imagine that the S1H is probably an improved version of it, if not the same, is more than valid enough of a camera. Given this, you're entering a new world. Being light is great in a sense that you're going to be able to carry this thing around and not feel it on your back for very long, or not need an easy rig or anything of such nature. But the problem is you're going to run into micro jitter issues. And so I would want to put more weight on this. I don't think weight, to me, is for what this is aimed at, is actually a good thing to have it this light. I'd rather have it be more robust, have it something that is, naturally stronger, like it's got a stronger body, stronger exterior. I can't judge it. It doesn't look like it's something that is necessarily built to be strong. It looks like some kind of high level plastic, which is fine. It's the same thing on the pocket cameras, but I would definitely put a cage on this. I think it would benefit more if there's more weight onto this thing. Now, that's just talking about the one negative. I gotta say there are plenty of positives about this camera. One is the price point at $3,500 USD for what this camera offers. I think is phenomenal. I think you're looking at a great value for the buck, especially when you're looking at this in comparison to the other box cameras like the Z cams and such. And Z cams are great value for the buck as well, but this really does offer a lot more that I find is probably more reliable, and perhaps probably because of the branding, given that it's Panasonic and they are a very reliable brand. I gotta say the GH5 was a workhorse, and the only reason why I swapped out of it was because I moved on to the Blackmagic cinema camera workflow. So this, I can speak for Panasonic, that it is a very reliable brand. The camera will last. I'm sure this will be very similar. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. And the fact that it's got professional SDI port, Genlock, and timecode, and having SDI is something that, honestly, I own the Blackmagic 6K Pro, and I love that camera. I couldn't rave more about that camera. I love the Pocket, but it had its issues. And the 6K Pro, I believe, really, really, really negated a lot of those issues. But it is still missing that one thing. And I've always said, if they just put an SDI port onto the 6K Pro, it is truly, truly, I wouldn't need an Ursa anymore, in my personal opinion. And of course, the Ursa has a little bit more dynamic range. But I would still say, like, I would carry that thing around everywhere if it had an SDI port. And this coming with an SDI port, I think, is actually one of the most attractive things about this camera to me. Combined with the timecode in, timecode out, and Genlock as well, which is not typically found in cameras at that price point of $3,500, is amazing. Having the HDMI be able to output 4K 60, I think, is huge. That's something, again, that is missing in the Blackmagic cameras, that given that Blackmagic cameras can only do 1080p at 10-bit 422, which is more than enough for external monitors. I mean, I don't complain too much about it, because I find that shooting externally, I don't really want to do a backup record of anything more than 1080p, to be honest. Given that this can shoot internally already at the highest codecs in B-RAW, which is my preferred workflow, or ProRes, why do I need more than 1080p on a backup on an Atomos monitor or the Blackmagic Assist, which I own both? Like, why would I need more than that? It's just a backup. As long as internally I can shoot exactly what I want. I've never had an internal recording failure yet. I've had perhaps my CFast cards overheat, but it doesn't happen often at all. I'd say probably only happened once or twice. And having this, HDMI be able to do a 4K 60, it's just a bonus. I mean, I'm not going to say it's useless. It's definitely useful, but it's definitely a bonus. I think one of the features that they talked about, and I'm not too entirely familiar with doing this, is using the Ethernet port to be able to control this as a live stream cam through their app. I think that's an incredible add-on. I think it's, for this body to be able to set it up, if you want to keep it really, really simple, and it's set up in a room where you're just kind of live streaming multicam, this is an ultimate camera. I think it's a little overkill, to be quite honest, for streaming, but so is the Pocket 4K, so which is what I'm using right now. So, but this is definitely not a camera I think I would use for that purpose. I think if you are doing that as a service and you are making money from it, it is an excellent option, especially given the fact that you can time code all of them in SDI connections, which are very, very reliable. It is good to have. I don't see that as anything that could possibly be negative. The 14 stops of dynamic range, I mean, it's there's going to be a lot of testing to show whether or not, it's all 14 stops can be used. But I mean, 14 stops is way more than enough than most people ever need. I don't think you need more than 14 stops, to be honest with you. So that's always a good plus as well, given that, my Blackmagic cameras, and always make comparisons to those because that's what I use. The Blackmagic cameras come with 13 stops, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, 13, 14 stops, both of them more than enough than what you really need if you know how to expose properly. One of the biggest things too that it comes with is dual native ISO. It's something that I've grown to love in the Blackmagic Pocket. I don't utilize it as much as I probably should. I like to stay within my 400 ISO range. I don't typically like to go into 3200 into the second set of ISOs. So, I mean, having it is great. I don't see why it would hurt. I love the fact that I can, if I wanted to, go into 3200 ISO and still get a clean image. So Definitely good. The Vericam look is tremendous. I think it's really good for what most people who come out to get Panasonics love. That natural look, which is really, really, it's renowned. Everyone knows that Panasonic has beautiful colors, so that's always good to have as well. The Leica L mount I'm not familiar with. As I said, my last time I went with the Panasonic GH5. So the Panasonic GH5 was Micro Four Thirds, and I adapted a Meta Bones onto it for an EF workflow. So, I'm not too familiar with the Leica L, but I assume that if it works for the S1H, which I believe the S1H is, then it works great. And plus, it's full frame. So having full frame on this is another huge plus, given that its price point is only sitting at $3,500. And I hope I don't look dumb by saying that it is full frame. Yes, it is right there, full frame. Yeah, so it is full frame, and that is to me $3,500 on a full frame camera with SDI, with 4K 60 output at 5.9K 6K 60 frames, which I believe is what it shoots, with Vericam Vlog and dual native ISO at 14 stops of dynamic range. I mean, at $3,500, it's so hard to say that this is not a crazy value for the dollar. I mean, granted, the Pocket 6K is $2,500 body only. Same with this, being $3,500 body only. So it's $1,000 less, but it doesn't have the ports and doesn't have the HDMI out that it has. And for me, the HDMI out doesn't really matter that much. But if it matters to you, that's a huge difference. Having the Ethernet, that's huge as well. And having one more stop of dynamic range and a full frame look, some could easily argue that $1,000 is more than well spent on those features alone, perhaps even more. So it's hard to argue anything about this camera being, it's smaller, it's lighter, it's got so many things to it. The only difference is that once you, like I said, there's issues with it being too light, which is, my personal opinion, in being that it doesn't have IBIS, so you are gonna get the micro jitter, so you're gonna want to put more weight on it. So in a sense, it's kind of counterintuitive. And then once you put a monitor on it, like you could put the 12G assist, which is what I have on this, and get B-raw recording. So in a lot of ways, being able to do that with this would be crazy, right? But it just adds a lot of weight. And I know that the 7-inch Blackmagic assist is no joke. That thing is heavy. And when you put two MPF batteries in there, 970s, it becomes even heavier, right? So, it's something where you're relying on the phone app, or you're relying on the monitor for you to navigate this body, which is, to some people, might not bother them. I think to me that would bother me, because then the thing is, the Blackmagic Assist is a battery sucker, meaning battery runs out really fast. And depending on what you do, I mean, I've been on documentary shoots with the Magic Assist, and I gotta say, having to have to swipe out the batteries every hour is not very convenient. Sometimes it'll feel like 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on it. And I don't even have my screen at full brightness. I don't ever really need it at full brightness. I would normally have it at like 30% brightness to 50% range. And a lot of times I find that I am swapping batteries like crazy. So, whoever is the assistant on set, I would be, can you get me another MPF battery? Can you get me another MPF battery? And it'll be constantly hot swapping if it's a full day shoot. So the fact that this camera is going to require you to do that, to have a monitor to be able to even see what the menu is, to me, it's a little bit of a negative. I wish there was something, just like the Z cams have that little screen on top that you can see the menu there. At least having that would be tremendous. But the one thing I will say is that it looks like the battery life will be quite serviceable for the body itself. So being able to use those giant Panasonic batteries, I think being able to run a higher battery life is another plus above the Pocket Cinema camera. So there's give and there's take, but I think in terms of its value, it really does kind of supersede what Blackmagic offers, aside from the fact that maybe unless you're like me, where you are biased towards the Blackmagic color science. And so to me, the Blackmagic color science is what sells me on it and the B-raw workflow. But like I said, you can stick a Blackmagic Assist, put it on here and get B-raw as well. The only thing is Blackmagic Assist is not entirely cheap, so it's a pretty expensive monitor, and you put it on top, and well, that adds to the price, right? So in that case, does it kind of evens out. So I think it's tough to say which one has better value, but I will say that this is very, very close, if not edges it out a little bit more. And unless you love the Blackmagic look, this camera, I think, edges it out just in terms of value. And to me, someone who has Blackmagic Pocket 4K, I have a 6K Pro, and I have an Ursa Mini Pro as well, who goes full Blackmagic. I have to admit, I have to give where credit is due. This is a phenomenal value for a camera. And it says here these are long op recording modes. So we're looking at 422 10-bit recording modes. At 4K, then we're looking at 420 10-bit. Okay, see, I wasn't aware of this. It's my first time looking at this here. So we're looking at, is that it? Well, okay. So internally, it looks like you won't be able to shoot 12-bit internally. Or you won't be able to shoot even 10-bit 422 internally at anything above 4K DCI. And not even 4K 60. Okay, so, I mean, you're only able to shoot 420 10-bit internally at 6K 30. I thought this was 6K 60 camera. Okay, so perhaps that's my fault. I didn't know. I thought this was 6K 60. But it looks like it's 4K 60, which is, I mean, come on, like no one needs 6K 60 right now, but just saying it's still something that has to be brought up. But it being at only 420 gamut and long GOP is a little bit interesting. It's a little bit disappointing. So it's definitely not something that recording internally is the greatest, but again, I will say this, given that this camera needs to have a monitor connected to it. So you'll probably be more interested in this, the video output, and where the SDI comes out at 10-bit 422. Let's see what they have, 10-bit 422. So the SDI is limited to 1080p, but you can get HDMI 4K at 60p. I see. Okay, so it's just a 3G SDI output, which is, I mean, for this price, it's expected. But, come to think of it, at the same time, it's like, okay, so the SDI is essentially limited. So you can have a 4K 60 Atomos monitor, but you'd have to connect it through HDMI to get 4K resolution, which is, I mean, if you're a 4K shooter, I think, which most people are these days, I feel like you would be disappointed that the SDI is not really serviceable to you then in many ways, because you're going to have to either deal with H.265 footage, or you're going to have to deal with going through HDMI. And I'm not knocking HDMI that much, because I haven't personally had that many issues with HDMI, but it is a little bit more clumsy. I've had HDMI cords break on me a lot and just stop working. And it's a little annoying to have to constantly buy a new one. It's, SDI I've never had issues with. Oh, that's a lie. I've had issues with SDI cords before. That's a lie. But HDMI more so often. I've had SDI cords mess up on me before. But so it looks like you're making a choice. So I think that's where Blackmagic stands out to me. The fact that you can do 12-bit RAW internally without having to attach a monitor is fantastic at 6K 60. Whereas this, you're going to have to record externally if you want something like a ProRes. Now, I'm assuming that Vlog, I mean, I'm assuming that Vlog unlocks 6K 60 or 6K 30 internally. I don't know. Maybe right now, raw output. There we go. Raw output. 6K 30, but through HDMI. I see. Very, very, very interesting. The other thing that I did notice is the memory card slot, being that they're dual SD card slots. And the thing with SD cards is I've had issues with them in the past. Now they're a little bit more robust. I don't use it as much anymore because I use Blackmagic. But when I did, I used a lot of them. I have plenty of them for my GH5. And my issue with them is they're easy to lose. I mean, they're so small, and it's like you can tuck it away. I guess you be a little bit more careful, but it goes with everything, really. If you're just more careful with anything, it lasts longer. But when you're in the heat of shooting and you're just going, having a little tiny SD card, you need to swap it out really quickly. You don't always have time to go back to your gear and put it in that little, Pelican that you have for it and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very easy to lose. I'm not a huge fan of this. I wish they had CFast, even though CFast is rather expensive. I wish they had CFast option or CF Express option, something more expensive, something more robust, something bigger. That's just me. Again, that's an opinion. So, most people don't care. So they even have USB-C interface. That's the one thing that I really love about the Blackmagic camera, the fact that you can record through that USB-C port. If they had that for this and you can record into a Samsung T5, then forget what I said about the slots. That would solve everything. I think that's one of the strongest points of Blackmagic's camera is the fact that I can just record right into it, plug it into my computer, and I'm ready to edit. I don't have to worry about transferring. Whereas SD card, even if a V90, I would probably feel more comfortable. I put it on a SSD before I, started recording. I think that's about it. That's about everything. Yeah, that's about everything. So, I mean, how much are accessories on this thing? So battery costs $195. Buy a couple of those. You're probably going to want the XLR adapter. It's a good XLR adapter. I had that for my GH5. I sold it along with my GH5, so I don't have it anymore. But I know that this is a great XLR adapter. But for $400, it's only because it connects to it directly. I guess I feel like there's better value for $400. But it's still good. Like I said, it's good. In here, yep, they're trying to sell the Ninja 5 Pro, so you're gonna have to spend a decent amount of money for a monitor at $950 for the Ninja 5 Pro, which is a great monitor. I personally, I guess if you want ProRes, well, the Blackmagic does ProRes too, so. I just don't see why you wouldn't go Blackmagic Assist. I feel like it's a better built monitor. I have both, so I know. Better built monitor. It can record both ProRes and Blackmagic RAW, which is supported through this camera. The battery life is probably a little bit worse than Atomos because the nits on the monitor is a lot brighter. At least compared to Ninja 5. If you compare the Ninja 5 to the 5G, I'm not too sure. But if you compare the Shogun 7 to the 7G 12-inch, or the 12G, 7-inch, it's night and day to having 2,500 nits compared to, I believe, the Shogun's only like 800 to 1,000 nits. So it's a big difference. So I think I would spend that extra money towards the Blackmagic Assist and be able to shoot B-roll, because if any of you guys have ever worked with B-roll, it is absolutely incredible. Or you can just go with something like a 4K touchscreen if you're just happy with the internal codecs that this offers, which if it doesn't shoot Vlog internally, I'd be very surprised and disappointed in it, to be honest with you. Because the GH5 shot Vlog internally, so 10-bit 422 as well. It has to. It has to. It'd be crazy. yeah, it looks like that's about it. I mean, I would build a cage around it. I don't know how much those things cost. If I could even find those, I don't think I can on here. Bags and cases. I don't think that'd be it. But anyway, you can probably find that on Amazon. Cages are not too expensive usually, and you're probably going to need an adapter. I'm assuming that I don't know why there's not an adapter for Leica L on the central page here. I mean, it's pretty important if you want to adapt Leica L, but you're probably going to want an adapter, right? You're going to need an adapter. You're going to need a microphone. You're going to need a cage. You're going to need a couple of these batteries. You're going to need the XLR microphone adapter. I guess that's one thing that is missing from this body is there is no XLR. There's only 3.5, which I'm not a fan of. I stay away from 3.5 as much as I can because it's just a slight little thing. I feel like you just get nicked, and it's just my personal security. You know, I love XLR, and then Blackmagic having mini XLR there, which is good. I'm not a huge fan of mini XLR, but it is better than 3.5. I've had the mini XLR port on my pocket, in fact, been jammed in there. It just won't come out. So, I mean, there's that. But, you know, I would definitely get this XLR adapter because I think if you're going to go with this type of camera, then you're probably going to want to go with a more cinema type of feel with the camera. So I go to XLR. I would probably adapt to V-mount, to be honest with you, because 43 watt hours for $195. I think you can get a 95 watt hour for $195, or even maybe even more than that for the same price for more battery. I understand that this goes into it and it's a little less hassle, and I'm sure this lasts quite a while, but if you can get double the power for the same price, I mean, why not? You're sticking a cage anyway, stick some rods on it. That's what I would do. And I would probably, I don't know about the V90s, to be honest with you. I mean, I would probably get a couple just to have it, a backup, a redundant recording, but, you know, I probably be recording externally with this camera, given that it seems like the recording formats are more powerful externally. So, yeah, I mean, this is a great camera. At the end of the day, it's still $3,500. I think, given its price point, the strengths and the weaknesses, all things considered, this thing for the value of its dollar is insanely good. It's the same way I feel about my GH5 when I had it. You know, GH5 for me, Canadian was about $2,800 plus tax. So it was, considering this price, it is absolutely incredible. And I thought the GH5 was incredible for its value as well. So I think this is something I would love to test this out. I'd love to play with it, but I would be pretty confident to say that if somebody wanted to get into kind of like the entry level cinema cameras and start using professional ports, start getting into, the kind of form factor of like a box, like a Red Komodo or the Z cams, and you were looking for something that's not as expensive as perhaps a Red Komodo, perhaps more reliable than a Z cam, then I would definitely say that this is a great camera to get. And considering that it's full frame, it just, it really does put the cherry on top of the cake. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. My name is Danny Lau, and I am a cinematographer out of Toronto, Canada. Art is freedom. All the colors, the lights, the shadow, tones, the shades, just the way it molds together to accentuate a mood. It's a truly beautiful thing. You pair that with the natural habitat of whatever it is you're shooting, and you're essentially eternalizing that moment in time. There is a stillness that comes from reliving a moment, an opportunity to freeze life in its tracks. And there isn't many things in life that allow us to do that.
I would do foreground with this nice ass Porsche.
And so I wake up every single day, grateful that I found this gift. And my only hope is that destiny allows me to keep doing this
And then we have the Calabogie.
And more importantly, that I have the people around me whom I can share it with. Because ultimately, this is all I got.
This shot, get that shot, and we're done with these shots.
And I'm okay with that.
That's Aussie. This one I did in like 2 days also. Like usually it takes me months to get any like portraiture drawings done. I was in the airport for 6 hours. No.
Is this not crazy?
It's fucking insane. Life is fucking insane. Look where, yeah, kind of like pretend you're talking, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Look to me.
Yeah, say something or say whatever.
Are you excited? Super excited. Should be that excited.
What, for Redneck Bistro? Is that what you guys are talking about?
It's food.
I'm recording.